How are Russia and China benefiting from instability in the Middle East? And how are President Trump's projects in the Middle East working to strengthen the U.S. and stabilize the region? Joining me to discuss these developments is Zineb Riboua, Middle East Research Fellow at the Hudson Institute. Zineb, in a recent article, you outline how the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas and the release of hostages is part of Trump's bigger strategy in the Middle East and toward Russia and China. I want to break this down step by step with you. Let's start with the big picture here. How do Russia and China benefit from a reactionary, fragmented Middle East?
They do align in the sense that they do benefit from the erosion of the U.S. order in the Middle East. More precisely, the erosion of U.S. allies, their weaknesses, etc. Why? Because Iran, through its proxies, through its sanction evasions, through a lot of its malign activities, benefits Russia and China in a sense that for the Russians especially, the Iranian proxies have helped Putin, for example, in Syria and elsewhere, to have a better position. This was demonstrated with the cooperation between Wagner mercenaries as well as Hezbollah, for example, in Syria. And let's not also forget that Russia and Iran, they have signed a 20-year comprehensive strategic partnership treaty earlier this year. And it shows how their alignment, especially since Russia's Ukraine invasion, is very important. They also are driven by, I believe, shared sanctions and anti-Western goals, and you can see that through the BRICS. Iran also supplies important drones and missiles to Russia. Iran supplies and helps China with its energy. Energy security is a very important component to all of this, especially for China. And just recently there was the joint exercises of called the Sea Security Belt that just symbolizes how much China, Iran, and Russia are aligned in countering the United States.
So, Zineb, what type of projects is Trump working on currently in the Middle East that could bring stability anchored in the U.S.?
Well, I would say that there are very different projects. The main one was the one that got a lot of attention, which is the Armenia-Azerbaijan deal and the Trump corridor, the Trump peace corridor. I believe that it was a really big signal. It is the first time that the United States takes a strong stance in the South Caucasus, in a sense that it has always been dominated by Russia, and it's a territory that the Chinese have been looking at very closely, especially in terms of investments, infrastructure investments, etc. One of the first visits of Trump was the visit to the Gulf, and he met with several Gulf allies. He made several deals, and a lot of those deals were about joint ventures in AI, smart industry, communications, and infrastructure. And these areas are areas that were dominated by China in the by China in the Middle East projects. The Chinese have been looking into the Gulf, especially through these lenses of AI and smart industries and communications. And this time, the United States is having a more of a strong posture in that area.
I want to quote your article here talking about Trump's ceasefire deal. You say that the goal is reducing the conflict's ability to dictate the tempo of regional politics. Can you walk us through your logic here in writing this?
I think that behind Trump's calculus here is to neutralize and not necessarily solve. Because as I mentioned earlier, the Trump administration is looking at the region that is a region with immense capabilities, immense opportunities, and they've been, and the Middle East is especially attractive to China because of energy, because of infrastructure and communications, etc. And it is a shame that the Trump administration cannot advance in a lot of its projects, whether stabilizing Syria, whether pushing towards more sanctions on Iran's proxies, on tackling the Houthis, etc., without having to talk about Gaza. And I think that this is more of a political maneuver than a tactical one, in a sense that Trump is neutralizing the issue, making sure that Iran, China, and Russia do not utilize it to advance their own interests. It's now a U.S. position, which is backing Israel, calling Hamas as a terrorist organization, which it is, and making sure that allies are all on board.
All right, Zineb, thank you so much for breaking all of this down for us. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you for having me.